appears that the hit did no harm, raising the question of whether that was all she had. She's at least mildly fascinating to him, so he smacks her away with its tail. Just when he is ready to burn Akira since she is powerless to protect herself, Alan appears and chops off the dragon's wing. As the dragon lunges at him once again, he delivers a cut that shocks it and orders the others to bring Akira and the girl to safety. Since it is a red dragon king, a common human should not be able to harm him, but this is not your typical human. This is where the dragon sees the light, and as the conflict breaks out, he starts to flee. When Alan follows him, the dragon kidnaps the girl as a prisoner to stop Alan from fighting with all of his might. He turns to face Lee, but she nods, indicating that he may go ahead and fight nonetheless. Alan then charges at the dragon with his last flash strike, drives his sword into its body, and blows it apart. Since the dragon has been shattered into thousands of bits, the girl is secure and no longer requires sacrifices. This is not how Alan had planned to spend his life, but as long as he's fighting for his friends, maybe it's not all that horrible. After some time, falsehoods are waiting for Alan when he wakes up after a slumber. She tells him it's okay since he must be exhausted after the fight with the dragon, and he apologizes for dozing off when he had only wanted to relax for a little while. As he inquires about the well-being of the others, Lace turns to look at Beatrice and Akira, who are presently engaged in a little altercation. Attracting Alan's attention, Lise expresses her regret for withholding a secret from him. She cured Akira after the dragon was vanquished, which suggests she is the Sanctus. Though Alan had heard tales about the Sanctus traveling and treating those in need, he had never believed it to be Lise. He doesn't care about it though, because it genuinely has no bearing on their relationship. Akira gets motion sickness from riding in carriages, therefore she prefers to go wherever her mood takes her. Thus later the group is set to part ways. That is, she is without a place to live. Since it seems unlikely that the town will accept her back, she makes the decision to care for the kid who was almost sacrificed. She also expresses her regret to Alan for forcing him to break his sword in the dragon battle, while the others get ready to travel to the closest settlement. Akira and the little girl depart in an unknown way. Alan's father was actually the one behind this whole operation. We learn back at the Westfeld estate. He intended to entice the brave Akira to that town so that the dragon might defeat her. However, he never would have imagined that she would succeed in really vanquishing the dragon. When he learns that the Sanctus was also present for the fight, he makes the assumption that she must have been the decisive element in the conflict with the dragon, even though she did nothing to aid. Although Alan's brother is upset that Liz wasn't killed by the clay wolves he sent after her, he has a better idea for his next move and will send out even more wolves. His father advises him to stop worrying because they don't have any money. Now that the dragon has been slain, they just cannot afford to continue squandering resources on additional assassination schemes. Although the son doesn't want to just leave the hero and Sanctus live, they will eventually have their opportunity to murder him as long as they stay in the Kimim. In an attempt to avoid having to defend himself, he disconnects after inquiring as to whether his source has located the elf he is supposed to kill. While all is going on, Alan and Liz are traveling to meet one of Liz's friends, who also happens to be an elf, though I'm sure that's just a coincidence. They wish to request that she build Alan a new sword because he shattered his weapon in the most recent combat. They make camp for the night after a little while of trekking, and as everyone is gathered around the campfire, Lai falls asleep on Alan's lap. Alan is fine with it, but when Liz wakes up, she becomes very embarrassed and says she doesn't want to be too close to him. It's also worth noting that these two are engaged right now, so Beatrice is finding it difficult to watch Lai struggle with her relationship with the Sundara act. She eventually finds herself leaning on Alan's shoulder anyway. They travel to Granholm the following morning, and despite being in the middle of nowhere, the community is very bustling. They keep traveling till they get to Liz's friend's house, but something doesn't seem right. Although Noelle is seldom without her swords, the home is silent at the moment. To make sure Noelle is okay, they do a little breaking and entering. However, When Liz gets inside and discovers Noelle unconscious on the floor, she starts grieving over her friend rather than trying to help her because, after all, she is a saintess. Beatrice reports realizing that Noelle is only unconscious at the time and that she checks to see whether she is still alive. When Lace eventually recalls that she has healing abilities, she applies them to Noelle in order to aid in her recovery. Noelle is devoted to her trade of sword manufacturing to the point where, once she gets going, she forgets to eat, drink, or sleep, which is probably how she ended up this way. She discovers the gang at her house when she quickly regains consciousness, but since she's friends with Lise, she doesn't mind. Noelle declines Lace's request to manufacture a sword for Alan right now. Even when Alan makes a request from a buddy, she can't immediately grant him priority because she has orders backlogged for weeks. In addition, it appears that he is carrying a sword. Yet, Alan notes that it is now shattered. When Noelle looks at the sword, she becomes inspired to see what Alan could achieve with the weapon she crafted. She intends to create one that is even more powerful than the hero's divine sword. But in order to do it, she must start working right once and chase everyone out of her home. But on their way back to the hamlet, a spy spots them and informs the informant that she has located the Saint-Yes. Even though Alan has been living in the West for at least 15 years, he doesn't seem to recognize him. Beatrice offers that Alan go to the Adventurers Guild and trade in some of the components he obtained from the dragon, as he doesn't really know what to do with all the spare time he has in town. It will undoubtedly bring in a sizable chunk of money, which will be beneficial given Alan's financial situation. He approaches the guild's receptionist and says, "I'd like to trade some dragon scales," but she needs to check with the guildmaster first because the things are extremely uncommon. While she is gone, Alan is contacted by the spy and informant, Horace and Miley, who ask him some questions regarding his dragon fighting exploits. Alan claims he couldn't have killed it by himself, acting as though he hadn't, and they both believe him before vanishing into thin air. When they go back to Noelle's residence the following day to see if she has finished using the sword, they discover her unconscious once more on the floor. Following her recovery, she informs them that she is done with the sword and wants to go try it out with Alan. At the suggestion of the Leaves, they travel into the woods together, but only once she is completely healed. Alan questions why she's going into the woods with him when he could have tested the sword on his own, but she truly wants to see him use it so she can adjust it to his strengths. Noelle tells them the tale of how she was once saved by a dwarf lady named Vanessa in response to Alan's question about why she is a blacksmith in the first place as opposed to a dwarf. Despite their disagreements, she eventually came to love her like a sister. But that is the extent of the information she is ready to provide him about the matter. They eventually stumble across Horace and Millie again as they stroll on, who, in spite of their negative feelings about them, were monitoring them. Noelle chooses to move on from it. They venture far into the forest, where Alan uses the sword to slay a few beasts. Later, when Noelle examines it with her analytical talent, she discovers that Alan wielded the blade perfectly because there isn't even a single scratch on it. She begs Alan to go farther into the forest, where there would be more formidable beasts, since she still wants to test it further. But when they discover a large wolf in the forest, the same one that appears to have killed Vanessa, they get more than a deal. So Noelle begs Alan to use the sword she created to kill the creature. And that brings us to the end of episode 1.
Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do subscribe to the channel and click on the screen for more contents like this. See you over there. Arigatou.